There we go. Rick, what's going on?
Randall, what's shaking? How you doing?
Living the dream, one small nightmare at a time. What about you? I like that background. You're doing better than me. You in Florida?
Yeah, I sure am, man. That's funny. Yes, I am down here and in Florida, and it's I'm making do rather than being in the studio. I was down by like where the I did one other show today, and I was down in this area where they showed me, I'm like, I need to rent a room because that's normally what I do. I've been to this hotel many times, and I'm an ambassador with Marriott. I'm like, I always rent another room just for a night to do my shows, to go on TV, all that stuff. And like, dude, we're all sold out, but I got a quiet space for you. I'm going to show you a quiet space. So he walks me down this escalator to like where buses drop off. He's like, nobody's going to be down here, right? He's like, the conference is at the other end. So then I get down there today, and when he showed me, it's all quiet and everything. So when I'm down there today, it's also where the freaking employees come in, like the hotel employees. Going back and forth, and then there's this door where they go into like the back area of the hotel, and it keeps slamming shut. So I'm actively muting on this thing. I'm like, son of a gun. So I found a room that's part of the conference area that there's nobody in, and the door was just cracked open just a little bit. I'm like, I'm going in there.
I literally just did this maybe like, I don't know, several months ago. We had like an earnings call. It was the exact same thing. We do like your earnings was going to publish on Thursday, so we always do the pre-record on Wednesday. So
yeah.
You're reading a script, but it's got to be like super quiet and dialed in, and like you basically just say go, and then you read. And each of our, me, there's the three of us, and like each of our sections are like, I don't know, 20 minutes long. And so like you're going through it, and I'm like, 10 minutes in, all of a sudden it's like, hey, I'm like, oh, damn it, stop. And like, I was
no joke.
Trying to find just some quiet place in the bowels of this hotel. I was like, can y'all just shut the fuck up, please?
Yeah, no joke. So here's what we're doing. We're just starting into this already. We're going to use this as what's shaking. I'm Rick Jordan. Today we're going all in, and we already are. You heard part of our conversation. Randall is back, everybody. And I'm so excited to have him back. We've been rescheduling and all this other, but give you a little, go back after this episode and listen to the first one that Randall came on with me, because he's the CEO of Phunware, which is a publicly traded company in Austin, has led over 40 angel investments, deployed over 60 million across 14 companies, venture capitalists. And that's actually what I think we're talking about today, isn't it? Because we didn't even get into that on the last episode.
I think I have a feeling we put us in a room, we could talk about anything, all day long forever. So it's like, we can go wherever the conversation takes us. And first I got to ask, I know you were in Florida. I mean, all the rain, what, did you get hit by any of that?
Not really. No, there was just one day where it was raining maybe 2 hours. That's about it. And then everything else has been just, what you see behind you. If you're on YouTube, you can see, but it's just freaking blue skies, gorgeous, great weather.
That's why everybody's going to Florida and Texas, man. The pandemic, and we can talk about it around angel investing and venture. It's funny. When I started angel investing, it was 2008. 2009, and Austin has always been a pretty cool tech town, but I call it a bootstrap city, so, and I'm not saying that for anybody who does this, whether entrepreneur or investor, I'm not saying that's good or bad. The reality is in Austin, people are not building the same kind of companies that are building in Silicon Valley, at least historically. And so I would always get asked, when's Austin going to become like Silicon Valley? I'm like, well, never. It's impossible to replicate what made Silicon Valley Silicon Valley. It was born out of this idea of the gold rush. You have this city, and obviously, besides the taxes, and I got my own reasons why I don't want to live in California, but I recognize that it's an attractive state for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Silicon Valley, gold rush, kind of now growing into what happened with Stanford, all of these people. It was this reseeding effect. And so you had a couple big companies, and then the engineers from those companies didn't want to move. So then they started companies, and then it kind of just grows exponentially from there. And that was before this kind of remote hybrid life, right? So everybody, you kind of need to go there to be in the flow, in the mix, in state. And it just created this incredibly rich ecosystem. And I was like, Austin can't compete with that. Nobody can. Pandemic changed a lot of stuff, man. It's kind of interesting. And I still think that that's hard to compete with, but we're a global ecosystem now. And
right on.
You don't have to necessarily go where someone else is. And for the best entrepreneurs in the world, you go to them. Investors will go to you. And now there's all sorts of different kinds of fundraising that you can do. You can do bootstrap it still. You can do crowdfunding. You can do angel investing. You can do organized angel investing. You can do venture capital. You can do, government loans. I mean, hell, now you can be an influencer or, God forbid, jump on OnlyFans and use that to fund your business. I mean, hell,
no joke.
There's a million different ways to make money now, and there's a million different ways to get money to invest in your business. Sky's the limit. And so it's really cool to see what's happening with both Texas and Florida, because I think so much talent is now moving to those states, whether it's tax reasons, whether it was because of the pandemic, whether it's because of politics, doesn't really matter. Good people find good people, and now those good people can live where they want and still, really swing for the fences. And so I'm excited about, where Texas and Florida are headed. Politics aside, just cool places to live.
No doubt. Me too. And, this gets into one of the topics I wanted to talk about today, especially about angel investing and really in the investing world anyways, because we've seen this transition, right? From pretty much money was everywhere to then the pandemic to then there was even more money everywhere because everybody was just dumping back into the economy. I mean, printing cash, right? And now the belts have been tightened back up again, but there's still some ways, like even with some of my acquisitions that I'm seeing, I'm getting into bed with the family office, right, to help fund some of our acquisitions. And they're excited. And they came up with this new way to where there's these companies out there that are leveraging data to put the value of your data on your balance sheet as an asset and then lend you cash on a pretty simple term loan according to what that data is worth. So now I've never looked at, as a cybersecurity services company, an IT services company, I've never even looked at our data as having a value to other people. And I'm not talking like personal information because that's what I'm in the business to protect, right? So that doesn't leak. Not my customer data, but machine to machine data. So how many times computers check in, how many times computers talk to each other. When there is a breach, how that hacker can move from one computer to another computer and how many endpoints it touches before it's actually stopped. That's all valuable. And it's cool because one, it has value, which means I can leverage it with acquisitions so that there's value in the companies that didn't even exist before to get the cash to even fund the acquisition to begin with. But then second, it's awesome because utilizing that data for those who would actually rent that data from me can actually help provide better tools for this industry to stop this stuff from happening in the first place. It's a cool ecosystem, man.
I love it. I love what you're doing. I know we riffed on this a lot last time. It's actually, appropriate. So yesterday we just had another patent get allowed, and it's all about geofence prediction technology. And it's funny because I was talking on an interview just before we got on with Proactive, and Chat GPT is all the rage right now. And as human beings are inclined to do, we simplify things and we don't really like to dig too many layers. We just want our soundbite and we move on. Chat GPT is not sentient. It's not in any danger of becoming sentient, and AI is a marketing term, right? It's an exciting marketing term. It gets people, excited, but what's it really doing? It's conversational AI. It's machine learning, in my mind, more than it is AI. If you put enough data together and you have really good algorithms and really good, statistics on historical, sentence structure, it can feel almost human, but it's really just machine learning. It's understanding how to predict the proper form of a sentence based on an input. And so data, you don't have to know someone's blood type to really know what they might need or what they might want. And so we're doing basically experiential AI with our prediction technology, where it's like, all right, if you've done this and this and this, you might do this next. And if you do this next, then these things need to probably happen as well. And so how do you think through customer engagement and customer journeys based on, who you are, where you've been, what you're doing, and what's most important to you, so that it feels like it's sentient, but it's really not. It's just predicting behavior based on zeros and ones. And I think that's a really cool space to be in, because, and you're 100% right. It's not about, I don't care what your social security number is. I just want to know if I can sell you a car, or if I can sell you a new toothbrush, or really cool sheets. Like, the idea is not to, people don't need to be wearing tinfoil hats and, throw their phone in a Faraday cage, right? It's like your data is still safe, and it should be. But what businesses really care about is just reaching you. I just want to get to you, and I want to tell you something. Or, to your point, I want insights from that data. Where was a breach? What's my customer doing now? How can we get better? How can we optimize? And I think that's a really cool space that's just emerging right now.
Yeah, it's exciting, man. I'm even thinking, outside of the tech space, because even the show, as an example, right? I'm starting to get these ideas. Like there's 350 episodes of All In. For those who have been with the beginning, thank you for being here from the beginning 4 years ago. I'm sure there's a few that have stuck around, right? I mean, to be top 2% in the world, I appreciate you. But as I look through the 350 episodes, right? Because you mentioned conversational AI, that's really what ChatGPT is, of course. We know that. Yeah. So it helps you have these things, and everyone's like putting in so little information to be like, hey, write me a sentence for whatever. And even I played around with it a year ago. It's like, write me 10 motivational quotes in the voice of Tony Robbins, and it'll spit them out. But now taking a look at like 350 episodes of this show, it can actually be trained, because if I fed it transcriptions for all of these shows, it can actually learn the way that I speak and I phrase things, so that it can then generate something of predictive text nature to write something in my own voice, not the voice of somebody else, because now I've trained it. And that training is so important for this. And that's why we've just scratched the surface, man, is because people are just figuring out how to use this stuff now.
And that's exciting too. I like the, there's a creative element to that I think is cool. It's a sub bullet or a footnote, but I just think it's funny. I love what people come up with, summarize Romeo and Juliet as if you were like a gangster rapper or something. Like, it's just, I love the creativity in setting the prompts, because we're only as powerful as our inputs, really. And so, it's interesting. I've got a couple of friends who play a little bit more with ChatGPT, and it's nice to, there's problem solving. There's engineering that I see them doing. Like, they'll word something one way and then be like, well, that didn't really get me the result I want. What if I worded it this way? And there's still something to that too. You're hacking something, but you're still thinking through old school engineering. What are my inputs? And then, what is my hypothesis? And then what am I trying to get to? And how do I refine those inputs? And I think that'll be important, as we think through, how do we set these systems in play? And honestly, I don't know, for those of the people that have small side story, because it's in the news now, a lot of people don't realize that Elon Musk founded, OpenAI. And
I know, right?
Realize that, as if he hasn't founded enough, massively successful things. He was only on the board for, I think, 3 years, and then stepped away and had some disagreements, but he founded it. And it was born out of an argument with Larry Page on what AI should be. People that don't remember this, Elon Musk said that, true AI is just summoning the devil. And it's only human hubris that we think we'll be able to control it, and that we'll be able to, put it in a box. It's designed to not be in a box. You can't put a human in a box. I guess you could, but you might go to jail. At the end of the day, I loved what he did. And it's as important, maybe getting back to an angel investing and entrepreneurship and venture capital and everything else. You're talking to another titan of tech. That titan of tech believes and this is what Larry Page said, because Larry Page is super cerebral and super creepy and socially awkward and very smart and very successful and can do whatever he wants. Sometimes he might steal your girl, but Larry Page wanted sentient AI, and Elon Musk is like, man, screw that. That's a terrible idea. I'm going to go compete with you, and I'm going to go do it differently. Here's Google, this massive company who by all measure would dominate this space, dominate search, has more data, more inputs than anyone else on the planet. And Elon says, nah, I can do this better. I'm going to go over here, and does it better. Now Google's freaking out because every attempt it has tried to copy what ChatGPT has delivered has failed miserably. And, it goes to show you that it doesn't really matter how big a company is. It doesn't really matter what it's doing. Like, if you've got a better idea, there's a path for you. And you don't have to find the white space where no one else is competing. Most likely that's a terrible idea anyways, because it means there's not a market. Find somebody doing something and say, I can do it better, and then go do it, and then persevere and stick with it. And, you'll find a way. And so I think it's just super exciting to see when people kind of take on the big dogs, and you see this kind of success that they're having already. And then what do? They went out and got funding from other big dogs. And what did they do? They found the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And so, Microsoft, hey, let's get some money from them. They have a dog in this fight. They lost the phone wars. Maybe the future is AI, and they'll play heavily in that. So cool stuff.
Dude, no joke. That you probably gave one of the best pieces of advice to any entrepreneur right there. And it's no joke, because if I could sum it up in one word, it's really modeling. Yeah. Is what you're talking about, because it's important to see that there's very few opportunities that exist to where something hasn't been tried before.
Absolutely.
So if there is that white space, I'm with you that there's probably no market for that. And when I say no market, it doesn't mean that it's a bad idea. It just means that people generally are not looking for that type of solution right now. And that's the definition that there's no market, is that there's no demand for what you're going to put out. It doesn't mean there's no need for what you want to put out. It just means there's no demand for it right now. So nobody's going to buy it, which means nobody's going to invest in it. Yeah. So you shift into modeling and being like, what are other people doing? This is all that I've done. This is the secret to how I've taken my company public, is that I saw what others were doing. I'm like, same like Elon, I'm grateful to be in that same circle as him, but you model people like that. I'm like, I can do it better. Yeah. And then that's when everyone is like, the family offices and investors like, okay, I can see how you could do it better. Yep. You're taking what everybody else is doing right now, but you're doing it in a way that's more efficient, more profitable, something that is fun, that people can catch on to, that there's a demand for, there's a market. All right, we'll jump on this train.
I gotta figure out what these names are, but I want to do, what is it? I'm looking it up right now. The Samware brothers. Which is a fascinating story in itself. And it's exactly what we're talking about, modeling. If you've never, learned about the Samware brothers, they're these German, all three of them are billionaires now. And they founded something called Rocket Internet in Berlin. And all they do is copy American startups. And they get the company they copied to buy them. It's nuts. They've copied, Amazon, they've copied Pinterest, they copied Facebook. And all they did was they said, look, it's working in the US. I bet that'll work in Germany. And they started, and now most people will be paralyzed by fear. Oh, Facebook's going to kill me. But they move so fast and so aggressively, modeling after what worked in another country, that rather than getting this protracted legal battle, the people they were copying just bought them. And they're now each billionaires, many times over. And it's just fascinating to me how entrepreneurs get so stuck in originality. Apple has never been original in its life, in its existence, ever. That was never the secret sauce of Apple. Apple is still innovative. Make no mistake. I mean, it will go down in history as one of the most important companies, which, by the way, wasn't that important, not that long ago, 25 years ago. But right now it has become one of the most important companies, in human history. But it doesn't invent things. It understands network effect. It understands human psychology. It understands community. I mean, there's commercials. I mean, and no matter how many commercials they make, which, oh, by the way, they're all awesome, Samsung will never figure out how to crack that code, because Samsung will literally lay out a commercial saying everything about Apple is old and just copies everything that Android does. And you think it's so awesome because you're in love with the iPhone. And people will go, I hear you, and that does make sense. And I wish I had a back button on my iPhone, but you know what? I got blue text bubbles. And that's awesome. That's all I care about. And then my friends are going to peer pressure me if I don't. And I mean, it's genius. It is literally, I don't say it as a negative. It's just incredible because they understand the power of human psychology and human sociology. And like, we're always trying to find ways to connect and be seen and be validated, and not just pay for validation, which is now a stupid trend. But, there is, these really interesting opportunities for entrepreneurs to model even their own behavior and success off of others. And, there's so many great podcasts like yours. There's so many great, case studies and things to learn. You have so much information to help you truncate your journey. Take advantage of it. But don't let it slow you down. I think engineers sometimes, make the worst entrepreneurs because they're so purposeful. It's like one more feature, one more thing, sometimes you just got to blow it wide open and, build a plane on the way down.
Yeah, man, that linear thought process will keep you stuck.
Yeah.
And it's
scary because you're like, shit, this is going to be so hard, and who's going to want it, and who's going to do this. And, if you really stop and have these quiet moments where you think about these pain points and like what's going on, and, how, don't be a solution searching for a problem, really assess these kind of pain points in your life and what you're missing out on. And that's where the innovation comes. But kind of close a chapter on the modeling conversation. I always laugh about like, remember Girls Gone Wild? And it was like, I remember as a kid, you think like, what better, entrepreneurial journey than like Hugh Hefner? Like, how did he come up with this? It's so genius. And then, you missed out on that because that was just a once in a lifetime, opportunity to create a business around, every man's fantasy or every woman's fantasy for that matter. Then all of a sudden, dude comes up with Girls Gone Wild, does it all over again. Like, it wasn't that was like a unique idea in time and place. He did it again. And then, hell, going one step further, Pornhub and OnlyFans did it again. Like, you can find what you're passionate about, whether it's sex or whether it's bean counting. And, there's an opportunity for you to innovate in that space. I guarantee it.
Right on. When it comes to angel investing, is this something that you typically look for as well as a modeling component?
That's a great question. This is anecdotal, but it's anecdotal because it's true. I look at the people first. I assume that whatever you tell me is your pitch or your strategy, that you're going to have to pivot. And so my question is in the back of my mind when you're pitching me is, are you capable of pivoting? Like, are you capable of seeing this through lawsuits, founder fights, harassment complaints, all the crap that every company goes through. And, Steve Jobs talks about this all the time. He was convinced that the only thing that separated successful entrepreneurs from unsuccessful entrepreneurs is the ability to persevere. It's perseverance. And that is such an important component. So I really look at the people first. What makes you special? Like, are you, you always hear this, are you, leaders born or made? I do think leaders are born, you are, there's a reason why I say born leaders. It doesn't mean you can't become a better leader. But I have never in my life seen a manager become a leader. And unless you've been led, unless you've been a leader, you don't understand the nuances there. But there is something innate and natural and organic about born leadership. And it's just people will follow you to the ends of the earth, and sometimes they don't even know why. And it's you can't learn that. Like, you either are it or not, and when you're in the presence of it, you know it without even thinking about it. And so this isn't a pat on my back, man, but I had a key employee in my cybersecurity company quit the other day. And he mentioned, and I do want to go back to what you were saying too, but this is so important for people who are listening, and I still think that he made the wrong choice. Yeah. But in the process of that though, because you're talking about the nuances between managers and leaders, and a lot of the companies that I look for to buy are led by, if you want to say led, but they're run by managers. Yeah. The owners are managers. Yeah. And that was the case with how I inherited this dude. Awesome individual. And he told me because I, as a CEO, he requested an exit interview with me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he was a brilliant guy. I mean, he could have been an officer in the public company, within 6 to 12 months from now, but freaking brilliant dude.
But he comes to me and he goes, I asked for this with you. And I even toyed around just saying, I have another job offer, rather than just doing what I did and saying, I'm leaving to go pursue another opportunity, not in a bad way, but it was just something that he wanted. He goes, and the reason I didn't just say, hey, I have this offer, is because I knew you would talk me into staying, and I wouldn't know exactly why I was staying. And I'm like, well, thanks. I'm like, I'm happy you made the decision that you did, because you were self-aware enough to understand that this is something that you truly wanted, and that you have been in the presence of managers before, but now you've been in the presence for 6 months with a leader, and look at how it's shaped you to help make this decision that you've wanted to make for the last 6 years. And I'm like, go after it, man. And then I'll see you back in 6 months. Okay.
I love it. It's so funny. I'm so glad you said that story, because like I have an even simpler version to kind of, if people can reflect on this and think about when they've been on, the receiving end or done this themselves. You're the guy the guy who exited is also a leader. Don't get wrapped around the axle with the label of leader. Like, leader doesn't mean you have to manage, 1,000 people. It doesn't mean you have to be on the cover of Forbes. You can be a leader and, have nothing underneath you but 2 kids and, a wife by your side and a dog, and you can still be a leader. So a leader is a label for a behavior that sometimes you don't even know you do. And I think that's even more important, that it's just, you don't think anything of it. Like I don't think anything of it leading by example. I don't think anything of it going all in. It's in my DNA, and I can't exist any other way. And so when people ask me about like leadership, here's a good example. You're going to dinner and you want to pay. A manager will wait for the bill to come. And there might be a little hemming and hawing, and maybe they want credit for paying the bill at that moment. Maybe they're still hoping that somebody will split it. There's this very uncomfortable nature once the bill comes. A leader, the bill doesn't come. He's already handled it. He or she excuses himself from the table, goes to the restroom, grabs the waiter and says, like, here's my card. Like, I don't even want there to be any conversation or discussion about the bill when it comes. Just bring me the check when it's done. Like, it's already accounted for. Put 20% on the card. It's already done. So when the meal is done and the other people at the table are like, all right, well, how should we, chop up the bill? Like, what should we do? Let me pay. It's already done. Don't even worry about it. There's no out. There's no renegotiation. There's no hedging. It's like, you already took care of it. You're a leader. Like, it's a behavior. And so, there's always these like little examples where if you really cared, you would have done it. You would have just handled it. You're not looking for accolades. You want definitive binary outcomes. Like, you either lead or you don't. You either pay for the check or you don't. I was going to pay. If you wanted to pay, you would have paid. Just shut up. Move on. I'll pay. I'll hit you up tomorrow. Yeah. Like, my bad. Like, I forgot money, but I'll get you tomorrow. You're a manager. Go away.
No joke, man. You're talking about setting the actions in place, and it's like developing the inertia ahead of time. So when that pivotal moment, this gets back to the angel investing too. So when the pivotal moment gets there, you already see and you know that you're capable of pivoting in that moment, because you've already set the inertia in place to handle that situation ahead of time. I see why you look for that, man, as you're talking about this, because that's it. That there is no conversation. It's like when you face that adversity at some point, it's already taken care of. It's already diffused before you even get there, because of the inertia that you've developed ahead of time. I love it.
I'll tell you too, one of the other things, and then we'll move to product, but like, I think that was the original impetus of the question. The other thing with people is, I call it your walk away factor. What is your walk away factor? Because like, if I'm going to invest in you, and this is interesting because there's two different thoughts. If I'm investing in you, I want to invest in leaders. You said something that I think most people won't pick up on. If I'm acquiring you, I love finding companies that are run by managers because they haven't realized their true potential. They might, and a lot of those companies end up, they might be a little bit distressed, especially during the pandemic. I know what they have, but they don't know how to get what they have to the next level. Those make for great acquisition opportunities because you can get a lower price and then you can get a higher multiple once you give it the love that a real leader can give and the real resources that it deserves. But when I'm looking to invest, that X factor, that leadership, that ability to pivot, the ability to be thoughtful and self-aware. And then what's your walkaway factor? What have you put into this that makes it hard for you to walk away? I want you to have maxed out some credit cards and, cashed out your parents' 401k. Like, people will run through walls when they've got, family members and friends looking at them going, dude, I'm taking a risk with you. You better not fuck me. Sorry, pardon my French. But that's the real world. And so, those people, they have a different gear. And, those are leaders. Those are leaders where before you even approach me for money, you've already collected every dollar you can possibly find in your orbit. Because you come to me, and now I have one caveat to this. If you can play with the house's money, do it. So I'm going to tell you, I want you to have, a very, hard walkaway factor. And I want you to have cashed out your parents' 401k. But if you are so good and you have such an incredible opportunity and you never had to touch any of your own nest egg and your own money and people are throwing money at you like Mark Zuckerberg, good on you. That's awesome. And that you should pat yourself on the back. That's rare. But if you are that person, don't feel like you need to go, cash out your savings if you can get money from other people because you are a leader, you're so compelling and your opportunity is so big. But I just find that stuff gets hard and yeah. People, you hear it all the time in podcasts now, but there is something to it. We are softer as a generation. And I say generation, I don't really care about age. I'm saying right now, people are softer. They're smarter. They have, a lot more access to technology, but there's just something about when it gets hard, people quit. And they go do something else, or they complain and they whine. And it's just, you got to have a stick with itness. You got to have a little chip on your shoulder that says, when the shit gets hard, you're like, I got this. You're not going to tell me I can't do this. Let's go. And so I look for that in people. There was an investor that I know, but I won't say who he is. He used to say, I invest in people with mommy and daddy issues and that are likely on the spectrum. Because they literally don't care about money. They just care about winning. And if I'm putting my limited partner money into, an entrepreneur, I want somebody who's still driving, their old beat up, Honda Accord. And even though they're worth billions of dollars because they just want to win and they don't even care about the awards, and they have, daddy never loved them and mommy beat them and, they're, slightly autistic and he's like, every time I've invested in people like that, the rewards are astronomical. And I'm not being rude in any way. I'm just saying, that was how he thought about people. He's like, I want somebody who just doesn't see the world like everyone else. And that kind of person has ice water in their veins and they are singularly focused. I don't want them dating my daughter, but I want them running my company. And so I always thought that was a very aggressive, perspective. I don't know if I would go that far. But I always appreciated that he was so honest about it. And so, people matter. How you present yourself matter. How much you go all in matter. And that's what I look for. Even before I think about what are you doing? What's your product? What's your market size? What's your traction? All of that.
That's beautiful, man. I want to wrap this up with touching on the current state of cash availability in the marketplace today. Where do you see things are at right now? Where do you see them going in the next 6 to 12 months?
Cash is no different than cancel culture. Let me tell you what I mean by that. If you are popular and people like you, you will not be canceled. So if you find yourself being canceled, it means people don't like you. The Rock could be canceled 10 times over for any number of tweets, videos, comments. And you know why nobody does? Because the dude prints money, even when he has failures like Black Adam. And he's kind of funny. He's kind of likable. He's got a couple cute little kids. And he's marketable as hell. And people like him. And so people choose to ignore all the crazy things he said. Cash is only tight for people who are not investable. Doesn't mean you're not investable forever, but in this period of time, you are uninvestable. And so iterate your solution, iterate your approach, bring in new partners, because there will always be cash for opportunities that matter. People will find ways to invest in people who they believe in, that are commercializing products and solutions that the world needs. So if you run into this situation where you're going into meetings and they're like, hey, we're tightening the belt, like we don't have money for you. They don't have money for you. They have money for somebody else because they are in the business of deploying capital. And a lot of these funds get their management fees based on deployed capital. So they're putting it somewhere. They're just not putting it with you. So that shouldn't dissuade you from what you're doing. It should just make you think, how can I change my approach? How can I become more likable?
That's powerful, man. That's the best clip that I think I'm ever going to have on the show. From a business and entrepreneurship perspective, no joke. I'm going to come to you and I'm going to take you out for whatever kind of dinner you want, because I need to bestow upon you like the Entrepreneur Clip of the Year award, for real.
I'll take it.
It's just
break bread and have a drink with you. I don't deserve it, and I appreciate the sentiment, but I will absolutely take you up on breaking bread and having a drink. You're a special guy.
Thank you, my man. I appreciate you coming on again.
Absolutely. We got to keep it going. And then I will get out to Florida, or you got to come to Austin. We got to do the next one in person.